Hello and welcome back to the channel with me, the Orienteering Kid, where today we're in Zahori for day 6 of the TORUS training week. Yes, we are here on this second to last day of this week with experienced course setters from across Europe giving us some very interesting training events ready for the TORUS Cup next month. And today will be no exception, as we are going to Slovakia to look back on some of the stations from ETOC 2018. So for those of you that don't know what ETOC is, this is the European Trailer Championships. I personally have never been, but I know that they are very highly competitive, and so hopefully we're in for some very interesting trailer. It has been Jan that's managed to put this all together, so thanks a lot for him for doing so. And yeah, we will have a go at that, but firstly I did promise you a look at the overall results for the week because I wasn't able to get them yesterday, and you will see that at the moment it is Severin now that's managed to take the lead. It's changing every day, and he is now 2 points ahead of Makia, who is 3 points ahead of Marit, so it's still very close at the top. I am down in 10th at the moment, but there's only 10 points really between the top 10, and with my lowest score being a 91.8 and some of the lowest scores in here being even lower, it is still all to play for, so we will have to see what happens over today and tomorrow. In terms of the club championships, it's all gone down to Massey though already. They are 40 odd points ahead, now actually 50 points ahead of MTV Season, and as always seem to be absolutely taking this by storm. We then have Krakow in 3rd place, and only 1.5 points behind them is MDOC, so it is going to be a very close competition for 3rd mainly, but there's still a chance of one of these two teams also making it into 2nd, so again we'll have to see what happens throughout these last 2 days. And then finally, as always it seems, we have the Italians winning, although it's a slightly smaller margin here. There's 26 points between them and the Finns, so it is again going to be very close. And then the Germans in 3rd, who do seem to be taking a small lead over the Polish, sitting in 4th, and the Brits only just behind them. So I think it is still going to be a very close competition between 3rd place, but I think 1st and 2nd place are pretty much secure. And so those are the current standings for the week as we go. But let's now have a go at day 6 of the week, and we have today a 1 to 4,000 map, but there's going to be 2 different types of contours. So there's going to be 1 meter contours for the 1st to the 5th station, and 2.5 meter contours for the 6th to the 9th station. There are going to be 9 stations, and it's going to be a 5 meter zero tolerance. It is going to be forested terrain, as this is where it took place, and they have specified the stations that it's going to be. So it's going to be 3 from the tempo qualification area, there's going to be 2 from the tempo final area, and these 2 will have had their maps updated, and then we've got 1 station from the Prio model area and 3 stations from the Prio 2 area, which are on the original map of ISOM. I haven't really had a look over these because again it's training, so I want it to be as beneficial for me as possible, but it is going to be in a forest, and from the look of this picture, if we click on it to zoom in, it does look like very hard terrain. I'm struggling to see whether this map fits it or not. It might do, with these 2 hills being these 2, but it looks like it's going to be some very interesting terrain as we do it, so we will have to go into it and have a look at how today plans out. As always, my answers will be appearing in the top right hand corner of the screen, so you can see exactly what I'm putting at the moment that I do. And yeah, let's have a go at the 6th day of the TORUS training week, and here is station 1. Okay, there's a path running through with Delta on it. Echo seems to be at the back. There's some hills, so that's the path. Those are the little hills. It goes down and up, and that seems like the bigger one, so that one is Charlie. That comes out the front, so I'm believing that's Bravo. That hill over there, could it be? It's got to be Foxtrot. Out the front here is a 0, and out the back over there is also a 0. So that was a good station 1. I think it was definitely a fairly simple one once you got your head around the contours, just easing us into the stations. If you managed to remember that station from when you were at ETOC, then you did very well, definitely. Although it may have been different tasks, so I'm not completely sure. But I thought it was good. It was easily identifiable, that path in the middle, and then you just used that to try and get a gauge of the contours. But I think they were all very clear, and the 2 zeros at the end were also fairly clear. And so we will now go on to station 2. Okay, this one looks a bit harder with Echo on the hill, and there seems to be a ridge out the back with Foxtrot Bravo. In the hill, the distinctive tree, could that be it? That could easily be it. That seems to fit the rest of it as well. And so in there is Bravo. Top of the hill. That's got to be Delta over it. That bit I believe is Echo. That seems to be behind the hill, and on there is Charlie. So after the first task I definitely sped up there because I think I was just making sure I had fitted everything right and then go with the tasks. And then the second task trying to make sure we were on the top of the hill. So it's a debate between Charlie and Delta, but I think the fifth task returning to that hill and going slightly down the hill definitely showed it was Delta for the second task and then Charlie for the fifth task. And I think the 0 going over the hill was also fairly clear. A few of you might have put Foxtrot, but I think coming from Echo, it was definitely the second hill back from there, so couldn't have been Foxtrot on the first hill. But again, I thought that was a very good station. It's definitely a lot different to the previous days, but I am enjoying it, and we will go on to station 3. Okay, there's a path at the front. We're going to have to use Alpha looks in a pit, so there might be some sandy by Bravo as well. Sandy area is Bravo. On that hill by the path, it's got to be Foxtrot. That's the wrong one because it's sandy. On the hill, I can believe that to be Echo. And out in front of us is another 0 because Charlie was on the hill in my opinion rather than the sort of depression shape in front of us, although a few of you might have gone with Charlie. But yeah, I think noticing the 2 sandy patches was definitely the key for me getting that first one right very quickly, and also that Alpha was in a pit. I knew that when I saw both the sandy patches and the pit was closer to us, I knew that Bravo must have been on the one that we wanted. Also using the path for the second task helped, and knowing that Alpha was on the sandy patch meant that it couldn't have been in depression for the third task. But again, that was another really good first station, and we are now moving from the qualification area of tempo to the final area of tempo, so they might actually get slightly harder, but we will see as we go into station 4. Okay, we've got the hill with Echo. There's a couple of hill shapes that it might be open. That must be that, so that must be Echo. That's the wrong one. That there is Delta. Out the back, it's got to be another 0. And we are out the front with Charlie. And I'm surprised I did that quickly because it did look quite hard when I first went into it, but I think I could clearly see the shape of the contour. Echo was definitely on the top of the bigger hill, and so the second task flew us out the photo, as if we counted the hills down it was Delta and then Charlie, and we returned to Charlie for the last task. And also the fourth task, I think Bravo was again too close to us on the middle of the 3 hills and we wanted the further away hill, but I may be wrong with that. We will have to have a look at it afterwards, and we will go to the final of the old tempo stations, which is station 5. Okay, there's a hill at the back that's going to be the main thing, and Charlie looks like it's in a pit, although I can't see a pit. Where could that path be? Oh, that's the pit there, so we're going round there, and I can now see the path by Echo. In the pit is Charlie. On the top of that hill must be Bravo. Near this hill, from the pit, it's the first one you reach. So I'm going to believe that's Foxtrot. And between the pit and the Echo hill will be Delta. Although, did I put Delta for the first task on the top of the hill? Because it was definitely Echo. I can't remember. You guys will already know that. But I believe, again, that was another good station. It was the hardest of the 5 that used to be tempo stations, and still are tempo stations actually at the moment, but the previous tempo stations. But I think once I spotted the pit, because it took me a while to spot it because of the orientation of the map, but obviously it was orientated as if it was to north, I then spotted the path that ran over the hill and knew that that first task should be Echo, although I may have miscounted and put Delta, I can't quite remember. And then after that the tasks seemed to fit with the massive hill at the back of Bravo. We came to Charlie at one point as well, and I think that wasn't too bad. I can't remember if I put any 0s either, but we will have to see when that happens. And now we move to the Prio areas, although they are still tempo, and this first one is from the model area. So let's go into station 6. Okay, there's a load of boulders. There is a person stood by Echo, but he won't be mapped. That boulder. So those must be that there. So that is that one, and there is nothing on that boulder, I believe. This one coming out must be Alpha. All the way back in there. I feel like we can't see that one. Although that may now be the null. Is that the null? I still feel like we can't see that. And that boulder will be Bravo. That was definitely a bit harder, but Prio stations definitely are harder in difficulty because you don't normally have the time pressure. But I don't believe we could see either the null or the boulder that were in tasks 3 and 4. Hindsight definitely helps though, so we will have a look at that afterwards, but I think I managed to get the shape of all the boulders right, and the first task being a 0 I'm pretty confident on. But we will have to look at that afterwards, and now we move to the final 3 stations, which are from the second part of the Prio at this competition, and so we will go into station 7. Okay, there's a path running through the middle of the valley. Foxtrot looks like it's a pit with the 2 boulders. That could be the boulder, although the contours are 2.5 meters. Where's the pit? That's the pit. So that's the rock and that's the boulder. So I feel like that one is Bravo, coming out to the woodland at the front. Those 2 boulders, the pit seems to match, but I think it's the wrong bit there. That's the inner of the hill of Alpha. That boulder is too far back, and we have the pit of Foxtrot. And that was again another fairly tough station, but it did used to be Prio, so I'm expecting them to be hard. I was struggling to get a grasp of how far Bravo was up the hill, but it definitely seemed to be the only rocks there, so I'm happy to put Bravo. And the second task being a 0 I think was slightly clearer. Charlie seemed too far forward to be the answer there. But that was definitely another tough one, so I may have made an error or 2 in that. We will have to see afterwards. But we will now move on to station 8. Okay, Echo and Foxtrot seem to be on rocks, maybe a root stock. Well, that is a boulder by Bravo actually, that must be. Are we believing that that's that boulder? I can't see a null. But I'm going to have to say that that is that Echo. Right up there. I feel like that's the wrong one, because I feel like we can't see that one. That boulder, I'm going with Bravo. That is miles out of the photo, surely. And a boulder right up there should be behind the Bravo kite, and so I believe that one was another 0, but I'm not too confident on that station at all. The map seemed to fit what I was seeing, but it may easily have been in a different place and a different fit to what I thought it was, so I'm going to stick with that. I will try and explain that one afterwards, because there isn't too much I can say without being able to see the map. So we will see that afterwards, but we will move on to the final station of the day, which is station 9. Okay, we have the cliff by Bravo. There's a path running through which will be useful. That is that path, it runs round. We want the cliff, so that must be Bravo. That boulder down there seems to fit as Foxtrot. That craggy depression, that's got to be that boulder, and so that one is far up as a 0. I think the boulder field, I believe, is Alpha, and that boulder will be Delta. Again, those Prio areas were very difficult, but I think that was possibly the one I'm the most confident on. Times were pretty consistently quick in the first part and then slowed up in the second part, which again I'm not too surprised about. Let's go and have a look at the stations. I think they got harder as they went. But station 1, the key to this one was identifying this path down the middle that both Delta and Echo seem to be on. And then when the map comes up, you can see there is a path down here. So we must be able able to use that path, and then we have to look at contours and see how they fit. Now, to me, there is a bump here which Bravo's on, there is another bump which Delta is on, and then if you look behind Delta where it goes up before Echo, it seems to go slightly higher where Charlie is and then up where Foxtrot is. So if we're looking down here, I believe we are actually stood on the path with Bravo being this hill and then Delta being the next hill as the path curves as well. And then you reach this sort of saddle area with the form line that Charlie is on, which is the centre of the circle, and also it fits with this other hill being this one here. So that one should definitely be Charlie. And then we come right to the front, and we've said before that Bravo is on this hill, so I'm happy to say that one is Bravo. And then also we've identified the hill to the right hand side of Charlie, and the path being this one here, and it's the first peak we get. As we can see, there's two peaks and it does go up further on the right hand side of the photo, so that one is also Foxtrot. But then we come to the 2 zeros. I think this one is fairly clear. If we work from where Charlie and Bravo were, we want the hill in the middle, but we want it off the path, so it's going to be the hill in the middle of Charlie, but off the path leads us to this little bump in the ground here. Some of you may have put Alpha, but I believe it's on the one back just in front of Charlie in that little one there, and so that one should be a 0 because I want it there behind this tree. And then also we jump off the path to the left hand side again, but we go right to the back. So some of you again might have put Alpha because it's off the path to the right hand side, but I believe it's in front of Charlie, which is here if we've said before. And some of you might put Echo because we go right to the back, but we did say that Echo will be on the end of this path here on the hill to the right of the one we want. So the hill we actually want will be out the back there, and you can kind of see the land go up a bit, and so that one should be another 0. And that was a very interesting first station to come in on. It took a bit of time to grasp the area, but I think most of these stations, my longest task will be the first task, trying to identify the parts of the area. But I think that station was good to start with. We then come to station 2, and to me there wasn't too much to identify here. At one point I was trying to spot this distinctive tree, and I think you can just see it as the bigger trunk here behind the smaller one in front of it, and in believing that one is the distinct one, we can also see some other things fit. So this hill with the 2 bumps on it seems to be this hill out the back, with Delta and Foxtrot being at the 2 tops of the hill, and then in front you can see there's a small spur, and that does seem to be what Echo's on. And so things are starting to fit, and we want a re-entrant, and we want a shallow re-entrant from this control description, and it seems to be near this distinct tree, and that is what Bravo is in my opinion. It's in this sort of re-entrant shape, and Alpha just looks too far back, probably on this ring contour there, so that one should be Bravo. And then we go to the hills that I was talking about out the back, and I spent a small bit of time trying to work out if this should be Charlie or Delta, but I definitely believe that Delta is higher up on the hill than Charlie, and so I'm pretty sure that one should be Delta at the top of that hill. And then we come forward to the spur, which I did already comment on being as Echo, so I'm happy to say that one is Echo. And if you watch the centre of the circle as we move to the next task, we see that we jump over the hill that I believe Foxtrot is on, and we want to contour right out the back, and so this one should be a 0 because I believe Foxtrot is here and we can't see the hill out the back. But that may have fooled a few of you if you didn't properly see how the circle moved, and you would have seen Foxtrot on a spur rather than a hill potentially. And then finally we return to the hills with Delta and Foxtrot, and we want the spur coming off to the left of Delta, and this is what I believe Charlie is on. It's slightly lower, so it's on the contour below, and it's only just lower, so it's probably only a metre below, and it looks in about the right place, so that one I believe should be Charlie. That was definitely a tougher station to grasp with the contours though than station 1, but I think once you managed to spot where we were, I don't think it was too bad to solve. We then moved to station 3, and again I spotted the path, and this seems to be again what we needed, and also I got quite lucky spotting the 2 sand areas and Alpha being in a pit which is fairly sandy. So as soon as the map came up, you can see these small dotted areas are the sand, and this one does seem to have a pit in it. So we want the one that's furthest away from us being Alpha in the pit, and then Bravo on this one out the back. So I'm confident to say that one is definitely Bravo back there, and once we've fitted that, the rest of it seemed to come along quite nicely. We obviously have this path, and we want a bump that's near the path. Now if we come from the sandy bit, the first one we reach is Charlie, so I believe that's this small bump here, and then we want one that just follows the contour down and up around round to the right hand side of it. So we go down and up and we reach the Foxtrot kite, and that does seem to be very near the path just here, and so I'm happy with that one being Foxtrot. And then we hit a depression, and for those of you that didn't concentrate completely, you may have just put Alpha because it's in a sort of dip, but Alpha is definitely in the sandy pit that's just here, and so this depression is quite a long way out the photo, and so I believe that one is a 0. And then we go to a hill out the back, and it's the hill to the right hand side of the sandy area of Bravo, and so you follow the hill down and up till we get the next hill, and that does seem to be the hill that Echo is on, and so that one should be Echo there on the middle hill in the circle. And then we come forward to a re-entrant, and the only control in a re-entrant is Delta, but if we are believing that Foxtrot was on this hill before, we want this control to be in front of us and actually in front of the sandy pit as well, so it should just be about here, and Delta is on the hill on the other side on this re-entrant here, so I believe that one is also a 0. Now to me this was a slightly easier station once I'd spotted the key parts of the path and the sand, but if you didn't spot that, I think that could have tripped a few of you up, so we'll have to see what happens there. We then come to station 4, and this is where we move to the tempo final, so the tasks may get slightly harder, and I didn't spot it originally, but you can actually see this path if we're looking at it as this small little bit here. So this is kind of what we need to use, and from this path you can see there is a small bump in front of us, and Charlie seems to be on that bump, and then we get a small spur, and that seems to be what Delta's on, and then we go to the next hill behind it, which is the hill that we want, and Echo seems to be on the top of that hill, so I'm pretty happy with Echo being the answer to that one. We then come back to the other side of the path, and as we've said, we're stood on the path. None of the controls are going to be the other side of the path, so that one should be a 0. If we're working from Charlie, some of you might have put Alpha, however I believe Alpha's on this hill here, which isn't the hill we want, and so that one is definitely a 0. We then hit a spur, and this is in the line that we've already talked about, and this spur must be Delta there, with Charlie and Echo either side of it. And then we go out to this hill right at the back, and it's the northeastern hill, which is that one here, and if we're following from where Alpha is on this hill, I believe that Bravo is going to be on the hill just behind it here, and you can also see the sort of edge of the trees, so there seems to be a sort of clearing behind it. So if we're looking at this hill being Alpha, the next hill we reach is this one, and you can also see that the area seems to go into a rough open or open land from the forest, so that must be the tree boundary, and with Bravo being in the trees it must be on the top of this hill, and so we actually want a hill that's even further back, and so this one is a 0 again. But that was probably the hardest task in this station to spot, so I wouldn't be surprised if quite a lot of you put Bravo for that one. And then finally we come forward to the hill that we have already anchored on, and so I know that this one must be Charlie out here. And the key thing here was also spotting Foxtrot and remembering not to forget it, so you didn't end up mispunching and going Foxtrot, Echo, Delta for these 3. But I think that one again was clear, and I think this station was actually really good. It's quite a tough station again, but once you managed to make it fit, it worked quite well. And then what I think was the hardest of the previous tempo stations was this one, because I was struggling to try and find a feature that fitted. I had managed to spot that Charlie was in a pit, but it did take me a while to spot the pit on the map, but it is definitely this pit here. And once we've got that, with Charlie being in the pit, we can then go to the right hand side and see there is a hill, and this hill must be the hill that Foxtrot's on. And then if we go down and up, we can see, if we follow along the path, which we can now see, we hit another hill, and we want just to the right hand side of that path being the top of the hill, and that is where Echo does seem to be, just at the right hand side of the path, so I'm happy with that one being Echo. Just remember to spot Alpha and don't forget it in your counting. So that one is Echo, and then we reach the pit which we had spotted before, so I was very quick to say this one is Charlie, and I think I've explained that fairly well. And then we go out to the back and we want the massive hill out the back. Now you would say that that is instantly Bravo, but we can also see that that is a small hill just here, and then we want the bigger hill behind it, so it definitely fits as being Bravo there, and I'm happy with that. We then come to one that took me slightly longer, but I am confident to say that this one is Foxtrot now. No, it's not. And then this one took me slightly longer, and I am now realising that this is my first mistake of the day, I think, because with Charlie in the pit we said that Foxtrot was on the top of this hill, and so I am now realising that this one is wrong and should be a 0 because it's on a hill out the photo, which was a very good trick, and I'm not really annoyed I got that wrong because that was actually a very good one. So that task is definitely a 0. And then we move to a re-entrance between the two hills of Echo and Foxtrot, and also fitting it in with the pit. It does seem to be where about Delta is. You can see the curve of the land going round, and so I'm happy with that one being Delta. So this station was the first one that took me a long time and actually includes my first mistake, but I'm not really surprised it came from this station. I thought this one was quite tough, and so well done if you managed to get them all right there. It turns out it wasn't actually a no-zero station like I originally thought. And now we move from the tempo stations to the previously Prio stations that have now become tempo, and I think this one was actually a fairly tough one to start with because we just have a load of boulders and we have a load of boulders on the map. So how do we know we're on the right patch? I think the first thing to notice though is this open land area, which must be this open land down here, and you can also see that this boulder has some vegetation around it. So this boulder must be the one that's Alpha's on with this vegetation. We then go to the boulder with Delta on, being this smaller one, and then this massive boulder that just enters the woodland must be where Bravo is. That then says that Charlie is on the path potentially, or is on this boulder here, but none of them are actually on this boulder, which I believe is behind the one that also has nothing on, and I originally thought it was that one, but it should just be in the woodland there, and so is a 0. Some of you may also have put Echo, but I think that does seem way too far back and is probably this boulder here, but we will get to that in a minute. And then we end up with a sigh of relief as we realise we come to this one with the vegetation, and so we're happy with that one being Alpha. And then we go right to the back, and I was debating this for a small while, but to me Echo is on a boulder that's in the clearing between the two woodland, because we can actually look through and see it. So Echo must be on this boulder, not the boulder that we want, and so it must be in this woodland over there, and so that one should be a 0. But I may be wrong. That one will have to be one we look at later. And one that took me a lot longer, although I'm fairly confident on it now, is whether this one is Foxtrot or 0. I'm happy with it being 0 because again it's in the thicker green woodland, and so if we're following this boundary round, Foxtrot isn't within it, and so that one should probably be a 0. I was just trying to work out what Foxtrot's on, but it's probably just in this white woodland here, and you can see the contour of this spur, and that's probably what Foxtrot is on the spur. So I am now happy with that one being a 0. And then we return to a boulder that we have already identified before, and working from the Alpha boulder we have the small one with Delta, and then the one back there with Bravo, and it's definitely on the southeast side, so that one is Bravo. However, that was a fairly difficult station to do, so I think well done if you have managed to get all of them right. And I think an even harder station was this one here, because I was struggling to get a grasp of the contours and the way they fit, but I think I've managed to get it now. We obviously have a path running through the middle, and that is what I kind of anchored on, and then I could see this crag shape here with the contour going in must be what Alpha's in, and then we have to work back from that, and we're going to go 1 and a bit contours up, so it's going to be about 3 to 4 meters, and that probably is about 3 to 4 meters looking at it actually, and we follow it round, and it's the first boulder that we hit, which is the one we want, as we want the western one, and so I am confident now that that one must be Bravo in that patch of boulders on the nearest one to us. And so with that one being Bravo, we then come to a spur in the woodland, and it's identifying which one it is, because I think Charlie looks like it's potentially on a spur in the woodlands, but I believe it's not, because I want it to be closer to the Delta and Echo boulders, which I believe are these two here. Now I may be wrong, and this may just be me thinking it through wrongly, but I think it's actually a lot closer on the edge of the circle nearer the crag with Alpha, so I actually want it to be about here instead, and so that one I believe is a 0. And then we come to the contour that we have already talked about near the crag, and Alpha is definitely in that lower contour in the re-entrance, and so that one should be Alpha. Possibly could have been a bit quicker with that. And then we go out to a boulder, and as I've already said, Delta and Echo are on boulders, but I believe they are on these two front ones here, with this one being nearer the path and then Delta being slightly behind it, and so this third boulder must be all the way up here, and we can't really see it because it's being obscured by a tree, but it might be that there, but that is definitely a 0 a long way back. And then we come forward and we want the right hand side of the path in a pit, and we can only just see Foxtrot poking out there, so it must be in that pit. But I definitely think, due to my time, especially on the first two tasks, it shows that that was a very hard station, and so getting your head around that again was fairly difficult, but well done if you did manage to do so. There's only one that I'm querying whether it's Charlie or Zero, and we'll have to have a look at that later. But yeah, that wasn't too bad. And then we move on to this station, and again, I'm not too confident on this. I have managed to make it fit in some respects, so I'm going to try and talk it through now. To me, I saw this massive boulder here and thought that Echo and Foxtrot are both going to be on this boulder. I have now actually spotted that Foxtrot is on the one in front, and this fits a lot better, and I'm a lot happier with it. We can see from the map that we want the massive one and we want the southern side of it. So even if Foxtrot was on this boulder and it was all one boulder, it's on the wrong side of it, and it's definitely going to be Echo, which is on the south side of it with North running to the right. So that one took me a while, but it was just me trying to fit things to the map, but I trusted it and we went on. We then come to one which I did Zero, but I am fairly confident about this because I think that Alpha is too far to the right. Because if we are following this up, we can see that Bravo is on a boulder, and if we sort of draw a line from Echo up Bravo and then up again to Alpha, that kind of fits the line of Echo to Bravo and then all the way up to Alpha being on this crag here, which is a long way out the circle and shows that the actual crag would be out the picture, and so I'm fairly confident that one is a Zero, but that was quite hard to tell, and again I may be wrong, so we will have to have a look at that afterwards. But we then move straight away to this boulder, and I was very quick with this because we've already used it, so that one must be Bravo in the centre there. And then we come to two more Zeros, but I think the first one was definitely clear because we've identified that Echo and Foxtrot are on these two boulders, and actually I'd thought that with Echo and Foxtrot being on the small one, there's no way it's got to be that one, but even with Foxtrot being on a different boulder, it's still way too close to this one that Echo is on, and so that one must be miles out the photo to the right hand side and be a Zero. I think this one was slightly less clear, but I do think this one is also definitely a Zero because I want it on the same contour height as Alpha, and Charlie and Delta seem a bit further below, so I think they are somewhere in this boulder field, potentially running up the hill by the Echo kite, so probably about here, and not on a boulder running along the contour with Alpha, which might be about there. But that is a long way from all the kites, but I do think this was potentially the hardest task in the station, so if you put Charlie or Delta for that, I wouldn't be too surprised. But there we go, I think I've probably got them all right there, but there was still quite a few Zeros in that, so we shall have to see. We then move to the final station of the day though, and I think this was the easiest of the previous Prio stations. I had identified the path running through, and I had also identified that Bravo was on a crag, so when the map loaded you can see this path running through and we want a crag. Now with this path I originally thought it might go off this way, but then I then saw it bent, which is where this bend is here, and then we want the first bit of crag we reach after the bend, which is the crag that Bravo's on, and so that one should definitely be Bravo there. And then we come out to a boulder if we follow the path round, so I'm getting more confident that it's fitting, but if we follow the path round we can see that there is a boulder just here by this boulder cluster here, and so just being in the photo on the right side of the boulder we want, I'm happy with that one being Foxtrot. I then had to think a bit more though as to whether this one could be Delta or not. If we're definitely believing that Foxtrot's here, the next boulder we reach must be the Echo boulder, and then if we come round a bit we can see that there is another boulder here which I believe is the Delta boulder. Now this may be wrong, this may actually be the small rocky depression, although that's not what the control description says. The control description says crag top of, so I'm even more confident now that this one is actually a Zero. Quite a few of you might have put Charlie actually, but I believe it's on the top of this crag instead, as the crag seems a lot bigger, but I'm happy with that one being a Zero. I think I've explained that one enough to convince myself definitely. And then we come to the boulder field, which we've kind of used to answer task 92, and it definitely fits with the line that this crag is pointing towards this boulder field, so I'm happy with that one being Alpha, although it could be on the one to the left of it, but I think that one is out the photo. And then finally we reach the boulder, and we have talked about this boulder being the one that Delta's on, and it definitely fits with the Echo and Foxtrot boulders, so I'm happy with that one being Delta there. And after all that being the easiest of the Prio stations, I think I've possibly only made one mistake on 54 being a Zero, not Foxtrot, so we have got a score of 291, which may be a winning score. I think this was quite a tough day, so I think most people will make one or two mistakes, and I think some of my times were slower than previous days, so we'll have to see see how we do as we look back on it. Let's have a look, and we will see that I am in 6th, which again doesn't surprise me. I think that was quite a hard day, and it possibly shows I might have made an extra mistake. I'm not completely sure. We are very near the end of the day though. I have done this quite late, so I might not drop too far. We'll have to wait and see, but I will join you again in a few hours time for the overall results. And we are back, and you can see that I've only just dropped slightly. We've gone from 6th place to 7th place, with Severin coming in after me in 4th, but I'm not really too disappointed with that. I think this was a really hard day, and as you can see, it was only one mistake. So really, 7th place I am very happy with. Firstly, well done to Tapani for winning the event with no mistakes. He was 28 seconds slower than Alessio, but with Alessio's only mistake, he ended up 2 seconds faster than him. If we have a look at where he won the event, thank you for Jakek for this suggestion. It seemed to be station 7, which was the deciding station, with both Alessio and Miko getting the second task in that station wrong. I'm not really surprised it was in the final part of the day. It was definitely harder in the Prio area, although in saying that, my only mistake was in the Tempo area, but we'll forget about that for the minute. But it just shows that one mistake can throw it for you. So very well done to Tapani for winning the event. Let's have a look at some of the station percentages now. We'll have a look at station 1, and it's actually looking fairly green to start with, although there's a fair spread of red, but it's possibly near the end that's lowest, and it is, with the final 2 tasks both having 73% correct answers. These were both the 0 answers, and it is clear that Alpha was the most common wrong answer for the first of the 0s, but there is a spread for some of the other answers, and there was actually a main spread between Alpha and Charlie for the wrong answers for the 5th task. I think when I said before about these 2 0s, Alpha was definitely a contender for both of them, and I think Charlie, being that far back, definitely could have been the final task, but I think they were both clearly a 0. We will go have another brief look at those 2 though. The first 3 were very well answered though, so well done if you got those. We'll then go to station 2, and it's looking like the first task, being Bravo or 0, was the most common wrong answer here, although actually it's a fair spread. As much as 52% is the lowest percentage for the first task, with 392 getting it with Bravo and 287 thinking it was wrong and a 0. The percentages don't actually get much higher. We have a 55, a 61, a 65 and a 67. I definitely found this area was fairly hard to read. I thought this 0 was possibly the clearest, although most people going for Charlie or Delta rather than what I thought was going to be the most common wrong answer of Foxtrot. So we will have to have another look at that whole station in its entirety. Quite a few of you putting 0 for ones that weren't 0s, so we will have a look at that. We then go on to station 3, and we will see how we're going here. It seems to be like the last task and the 3rd task were the worst 2 answered, and they definitely were, with 58% of you getting the 3rd task right, 431 going with 0, but there were 298 of you that went for Alpha instead, and also the final task with 54%, 401 of you going with 0 and 220 going with Delta, and even a few for Charlie as well. I can't quite remember what this station was, but I think the fact that the 3 non-0 answers were answered very well is a good thing. So it just seems to be the 0s that were tripping you up here, so we will have a look at that in station 3. And then we'll go on to station 4, and we'll wait for it to load, and we'll scroll, and it seems to be the 2nd task which was the worst answered here, although there may be quite a few low percentages. And actually this is a below 50% task, and there is a very big spread of wrong answers, mainly Alpha and Charlie, but there's a few for Bravo, Delta and Echo as well. 312 of you managed to get the right answer of 0 though. To me that was definitely a clearer 0 than the 4th task, but I think some of you might have just been getting used to the station and so may have not completely clocked that Alpha was on the wrong hill for that one. And the 2nd 0 was more commonly correctly answered, but the final task only had 52% correct answers, being 389 of you putting Charlie. Quite a lot put Foxtrot surprisingly, a few also put Delta, and a few also 0'd it. So we will have a look at those 2 tasks specifically in station 4. We then go to station 5, and this is the point where I did make my mistake, so let's have a look and see how many of you got the 4th one wrong. It definitely looks like the worst answered, to be perfectly honest, and it is with 57%, and it's the only badly answered task in this station, with 282 of you, including me, going for Foxtrot and 423 going for 0. I did clearly spot my mistake beforehand, but I think it was definitely a tough one to make, and I'm not really surprised that many did get it wrong, so we will will go have a look at that one. But again, the rest of the station was very well answered. I think you were getting used to the terrain now. It was mainly only contours that we could use, although there were some patches of open land and a couple of pits as well. So yeah, well done for getting most of those right. Now we're going on to station 6 and we're in the Prio area, and I'm not really surprised that there is a lot more red here. It's mainly in the first and fourth tasks, I think, and this fourth task with 22% of you getting it right, that is very low. 550 went for Foxtrot and 167 went for 0. Now to me, the area that Foxtrot was on was definitely a raised bit of ground, but to me it didn't seem high enough to be a knoll, and the area that the knoll was in was definitely in thicker woodland than what Foxtrot was in. So I was very happy to go with 0, but I can see why most of you did go with Foxtrot. There were a spread of answers for the first one, which was also below 50%, quite a lot for Charlie and Delta, and a fair few for Echo as well, but the answer to that one was 0, and also the third task being a 0, but 280 went for Echo instead of the 398 of you going for 0. So again, with showing that the 0 tasks do seem to be the harder tasks, with most of you getting it wrong there. So well done for getting the 2 that weren't 0s right. Definitely we'll go have a look at those 3 0s though. And then station 7, it seems to be this second task which was the worst answered by far, and it's definitely going to be a very low percentage here of 17. It's the lowest percentage we've ever had since I've started this videos, and there is a real spread of wrong answers of Charlie, Delta and Echo, but 130 managed to get it right with a 0. So this one was the one in the woodlands which was on a spur in the woodlands, and I definitely think Charlie was on what looked like a spur, but I think it was definitely too far forward for me, and Delta and Echo looked too far back. But I'm not really surprised, those were the common wrong answers there. I think there were definitely 3 that it could plausibly have been. And also the first task was a lot better answered than the second task, 65%, but there was a fair few that put 0 and a few that put Alpha as well. To me, I thought Alpha was clearly on the crag at the front, but I definitely think that the rocks that Bravo are on didn't look far enough up the hill to start with, but after looking over it I was pretty convinced it was Bravo, but I'm not surprised 108 of you also went with 0. But again, these final 3 tasks actually were very well answered, one of them actually being a 0 as well, so well done for getting those right. Then we go to station 8, and it's the second task already, and possibly the 5th task that are going to be the lowest 2 percentages, and definitely the second task being 36%. 400 went for Alpha, but 272 got it right with a 0. This one was definitely the hardest problem in this station for sure, trying to work out whether it was on the right crag, but I think using the line of the 2 boulders that Bravo and Echo are on definitely helped here, but we will have another look at that one. And also the final task, as we said, 53%, most of you going with Charlie, but to me Charlie wasn't far enough up the hill, so that to me was a clear 0, and 395 of you agree with me, but we will have another look at that one as well. But these other 3 tasks averaged 90%, which is very well done from all of you. So again, even when there were a couple of tasks that confused you, you managed to get a fair number of them right, so well done. And then finally we hit station 9, and it looks like these second and third tasks might be the worst answered. There's a fair few for the first one as well though, and it was the second and third tasks that both had below 50%. It was definitely a debate between Echo or Foxtrot for the second task. Slightly more people went for Foxtrot than Echo, but they were both on boulders, so it was definitely identifying which one was which. And also, if you hadn't quite had a grasp of that properly, you might have put Delta or Charlie for this 0 within the crag area. But again, to me, Charlie was way too far back and Delta seemed too close to us on a boulder rather than a crag. But still, 297 managed to get that right, so well done if you were one of those. And then again, these other 3 tasks were very well answered. So even in the Prio area with the harder tasks, there was still a lot of you that got a fair few of them right, so very well done. Let's have a look at some of these slightly less well answered tasks. The first station we come to, it was mainly these final 2 0s which were the worst answered, so many of you managed to get a good grasp of the map straight away and all the contours that were going around it, so well done. Although I do think this path was very clear, so it wasn't the hardest of stations to come in on. These 2 0s though, Alpha is definitely on what could easily be this spur, but that spur is actually a lot higher and a lot further back than this spur that we want. It should be in line with the Delta kite, which we did identify as being on this bit here, and so it's on the bump behind the tree. Some of you may not have seen it because it's behind the tree, but I think that one was fairly clearly not Alpha because Alpha's on this hill. And also in saying that, when we jump to the final task with Alpha being on this this hill there is nothing behind the Alpha Kite. So I think that one to me was clearly a 0, and also having the answer of Charlie at the start of the station, some of you should have really believed that that was the answer, and so that one did seem to me again too close and another 0 because I want it on a hill that does look like it's just back there. But well done if you managed to get those two right. They weren't too badly answered compared to some of the other tasks, and yeah, that didn't seem too bad. This station was a lot worse answered though, to be fair. This first task was the worst one. I think this was potentially just trying to get a shape of the land though. It was fairly difficult at points, and to me, as much as I identified this distinct tree, I was just trying to find one that looked the biggest. So I did get quite lucky finding that one. To me, that's not the most distinct, but I'm happy to work with it as that one. And the contours do seem to fit around that, with the spur and the massive hill at the back with the two peaks. So in doing that, you can definitely see there is a re-entrant over by Bravo, but there may easily have been other places. Bravo might have been in this re-entrant here. So I know quite a few of you zeroed it, but I think to me that was just getting a grasp of the map, and it did take me 16 seconds to do that task, mainly to try and fit the contours to it. But again, taking 16 seconds is better than taking 2 and getting it wrong in the grand scheme of things. So it's just really trying to get a better grasp of contour features, and when the contours are only 1 meter, you're not expecting them to be that high. So yeah, I do think that was quite a hard one to start with, and I'm not surprised quite a few of you got that one wrong. And then also this second task, some of you may just still had not the best idea where we were, and to be honest, Charlie does look like it could be on top of a hill, but it's definitely a lower position than Delta, and so Delta will be at the top of this hill rather than Charlie. And in working that out, there is a top of a hill here in Delta, and it does also fit with a second top of the hill over by Foxtrot. So I was happy with that as Delta, but again, if you're still getting used to the map, I'm not surprised a fair few of you will have got that one wrong. And also this 0 being a long way over, some of you may have then thought that in the third task it may have actually been Bravo, and then coming across here will actually be Delta or Charlie on the end of this spur, and that definitely could have fitted, but I do think this hill does look on the map too high to be any of this area in front of that back area, and so I was still very confident that was a 0, and I was right for the first 3 tasks. But again, it's just working with the area, trying to use the features that we can use. I got lucky with spotting the distinctive tree, but yeah, those were some very difficult tasks, so don't be too disheartened if you got those wrong. In station 3, there were definitely some key areas which got you the answer here, being the sandy areas with the pits. This third task was fairly well answered as a 0, but I think to me, spotting the sandy pit here being Alpha, I was ready for Alpha to be in that pit, and so when it was another depression to the left of the pit that I wanted Alpha to be in, I was ready to put that as a 0. But if you hadn't realised that personally, I think you may have easily trusted that that was a depression, and it is quite hard to spot that pit behind the open land and the sandy ground symbols, so I'm not too surprised quite a few of you put Alpha there, but to me that one is clearly a 0. And also this one being in the re-entrant, it's again using the Alpha Kite, and this seemed to be the key, spotting the sandy pit and the other sandy bit out the back. We did use it in the first task, so if you got that one right, then you would have known there is some sandy areas, but I do think if you're still getting a grasp of the hills, you could think that this spur is these 2 bumps here, and so Delta is in the spur behind it. But to me, Delta is too far away from the path to be that spur as another point, because the path does just run here, and so I do want it to be just in front of me here, and so will be a 0 in the re-entrant rather than on the top of the hill with Charlie. But again, I'm not too surprised quite a few of you got that wrong. There was just one key to really solving this station, and if you didn't spot that, then you would have struggled a bit. This station was answered a bit better though. I think the hardest task here by percentages was this one. Most of you managed to get this one as Echo being on the top of a hill. I don't think that was too bad to spot, but then when you had the top of another hill, you just had to work the contours back. And this was a fairly difficult task considering the path isn't the clearest here, but you can see that from this hill, you do have the spur of Delta leading up to the hill of Alpha. And so when this is the hill of Alpha, we want a hill that is actually behind us. And so to me, that one is clearly a 0, but again, still getting a grasp of the station in the time, that could be quite hard for you to do. So I'm not too surprised that there were a few answers of Alpha in that scenario, and even some of Charlie being a hill quite close to us. But if it is Charlie, then in that case, or even Alpha, where is the path that is running through here? We would be able to see one that kind of ran around there, and so to me the path must actually be behind us, and that is even clearer for me being a 0. This 0 was much better answered. I expected a few more of you to be going for Bravo rather than 0, but to me again Bravo does seem too close and in the woodland, as we said before, rather than the open land. It was this task being Charlie that caught a few more of you out, and a fair few of you put Foxtrot for this. To me, I also got quite lucky in the fact I'd half disregarded Foxtrot, as I hadn't really clocked exactly where it could be, and so when I identified Echo, Delta and Charlie to be on this line of spurs and hills, I knew that that one could be Charlie. I can agree now that Foxtrot is on this contour here, and so could easily be on this hill, but with a form line and a contour coming round here, and that one just being a contour below, this area will be a metre higher than this area, and Foxtrot does look about a metre lower than Charlie. So to me that one is clearly a Charlie, and with it being the 5th task and the area that I anchored on, it was very quick for me to go on, but I can also see why quite a few of you may have made that mistake. I also don't think this station was very badly answered, apart from this 0, which I did get wrong as well, and I'm not really surprised I did get it wrong, because I was just working back from a pit to the first hill I saw, but then I did notice that with this pit and just going up the hill, we should actually hit this hill with the path on it instead of the hill behind us, which will be out the photo, and so this one is more clearly a 0. But again, I'm not really surprised quite a lot of you put Foxtrot like I did. You just work from a hill. It does seem to fit fairly well, and so it is just a learning curve. We do have to learn. We learn about reading the map properly, but some things do just trick us on the day, and that is how it goes. When moving to the Prio stations, however, things did get a lot harder, and it is these 3 zeros that people were getting wrong, mainly the 3rd one. The 2 answers that were actually controls were very well answered though. This task was fairly difficult, especially coming straight in. It took me a couple of seconds to clock the boulders properly, but you can clearly see now that this vegetation round this boulder must be the vegetation round this boulder here of Alpha, and so you just slowly count them back up. It does definitely fit with the open land as well, and you go this small boulder being the Delta boulder, this boulder being Bravo, and then we actually want this small boulder behind 2 big boulders, which must be those boulders over there with nothing on it as it is, and we just want a boulder behind it which still has nothing on it. I can also see why quite a lot of you might have put Echo if you're potentially thinking some of these boulders are some of the ones slightly further up, but I do think this open land is too big to be any of the areas up here. We must be further down. And this 3rd 0 again, I think quite a lot of you might have put Echo, but to me, if we can see Echo and the boulder that Echo is on, it must be part of the rough open land, and it is actually this boulder here, because we can see all the way through. What we won't be able to see is a boulder in the green, which is the thick vegetation, and so it can't be the boulder that Echo is on, so it must be a 0 right out the back there. And also this 4th task being on a knoll, to me that could be a knoll, but it just doesn't seem to go high enough. And in relation to these 2 boulders on the map, there is a form line that comes round, so that is clearly now to me this sort of form line here that goes around Foxtrot, and so Foxtrot is in that area rather than on the knoll. Again though, another way of telling is the knoll is in the thick vegetation like the boulder in the previous task, and so again must be right out the photo, but if it was in the photo we still wouldn't be able to see it, and so that is another reason that one is a 0. It was the longest task for me in this station, as I was thinking about it a small bit, but now I am very happy to say that one is a 0. But I'm not surprised there were quite a few errors in this station with the 3 zeros. It was quite a tough station without any zeros anyway, so well done if you managed to get even a couple of those right. Moving into the final 3 stations being in the Prio 2 area, it definitely again got a lot harder with all the woodland and the boulders and the steep slopes, and the first 2 tasks were the worst answered. I can definitely see why quite a lot of you might have put Alpha for this one, because the rock features could be 3 separate boulders, they are that big, and if you don't notice the crag at the bottom and the pit next to it, then you could easily think we are stood a lot further up the path, but there are a fair few contours between there and the path, so the boulders will be a lot higher than just this bit here, because we can now see it's on the lower contour, and so I did disregard Alpha straight away. I was looking at Bravo, and Bravo is the right answer here, and it did look too low for me to start with, but remembering the distance of the contours, it is about 4 meters, 1.5 contours, and that could be about about 4 metres up that slope. So again, I think that one is good as Bravo, but I'm not surprised quite a few zeroed it. And there were 3 very common wrong answers here of Charlie, Delta and Echo, and I'm not really surprised by most of them. We are going very near the path, and Echo is very near the path on a boulder. Delta is also up in the woodland on potentially a spur, and Charlie is also in the woodland near the path on what looks like a spur. But working through, as much as Echo is close to the path, it's not really on what looks like a spur, and so is probably on the boulder in the circle but further back. Delta, as much as it is in the woodland on what looks like a spur, it's too far away from the path, and so is on the boulder further back. And Charlie, as much as it is near the path and is on a spur, is way too close to the crag that has Alpha on it, and so we actually want a spur that is further back. It's quite hard to see it, but it will be between Charlie and Echo, about there, and so that one is a 0. Those 3 kites were very viable options, but I think you realised, especially as we went into 74, that Delta and Echo couldn't have been them as they were on the boulders. But again, Charlie being the most common wrong answer of those 3, definitely a good candidate, but I think we've proved that it's definitely the wrong candidate and should be about there. So yeah, the final 3 tasks were very well answered in this station though, so well done for getting those right. And then most of these were quite well answered. The 84-0 was very well answered actually. This one was the worst answered in the station, and I can see why, because you just look up the hill and you see that Alpha is on a crag and you don't really have much else to work with, and because you want a crag you may just go straight away with Alpha. But when doing so you have to try and find features that work with lines and other stuff like that, and the clear features for me that I had already identified was the boulder with Echo on it and the boulder with Bravo on it, which are these 2 boulders here. And so when drawing a line from Echo and Bravo and continuing it up, you do hit the Alpha kite, and in doing so with the map, as we did before, we hit the crag higher up. And so this is definitely the wrong crag, and so is a 0. And I also think Alpha just looked too far up generally. It's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4 contours maybe higher, which is 10 metres higher than the actual location, which to me again definitely in my gut felt that it was going to be a 0 before I'd done the line. But with not much to work with, I'm not surprised most of you did put Alpha, but well done if you managed to spot that was a 0. And also the final 0 just being on a boulder somewhere up the boulder field. I'm not surprised Charlie and Delta were commonly used here. Charlie was definitely the more common answer than Delta, and I think it's definitely on a clearer defined boulder. But as we work up, it's going to be in line with the end of this massive boulder, and so Delta must actually be on this small crag just there, and Charlie on the boulder just on top of it. So Charlie is on this boulder out the circle and is too far right than the boulder we actually want. And I definitely thought I gauged that from the photo on its own anyway, because I wanted it nearer the crag up the top here. So it must be actually on a boulder that you can just see poking out behind this tree, and again another 0. But I think that was definitely a hard task and another hard station. So well done for getting this 0 right, and well done for getting the other 2 tasks right as well. And then finally we moved to station 9. I didn't think this station was as bad as the previous 2, but I still think the 0 and this task were quite hard to grasp. We just get given a boulder, and there are many boulders in the area, so it could easily be Echo or Delta, but Foxtrot is clearly on a boulder, and there are no boulders more south than Foxtrot in the map, and so Foxtrot must be on the boulder that is in the circle the furthest down in this line. And so to me that one is clearly Foxtrot, but quite a few of you might have easily put Echo, not really noticing the boulder fields on the other side or the path either. And then also this 0 was quite hard, just being on the top of a crag, and Charlie is clearly on the top of a crag, but it is a much bigger crag than what that is describing, and is a lot further up the hill. If we follow the path round, it must be on the top of this crag here instead, and so miles away from the actual location. The only other contender is Delta, but I think that is clearly at the bottom of a crag if that is the crag, and so the control description would be wrong as much as it is within 5 meters, and so that one is actually on a boulder rather than the crag. track. But that wasn't too badly answered. I think most people were definitely getting used to it by the end, and well done if you managed to get quite a few of them right. But yeah, overall it was a really good day. It was quite nice to be challenged in a different way. This is the first day of the week that we have had a foresty terrain with a lot of boulders and contours as well, and it was actually very good fun. So thank you for Jan for finding all these stations from the ETOC 2018. It was great to experience them in this environment as we can. Let's go and have a look now at the overall results for the week with one day remaining, and Severin is taking the lead here by a long margin of almost 5 points now. With one event left to go, we have hit the 6 scores of the week, and so after the event yesterday we will be losing your worst score, so it is all still to play for, but I think Severin has clearly taken first place here across the week, so well done for him for doing so, as long as he had a goodish day tomorrow. We also have Makia in second place and Alessio in third place, and there's only 0.3 points between them, so it is going to be very close for the other medal positions. I have now moved up 2 positions to 8th, and I think with my 91.8 I could improve a fair bit tomorrow, but we'll have to have a look and see what happens with tomorrow's event. And then with the club competition, as we expected, Massey are really taking it. They are more than 60 points ahead now and have clearly won this, as they always seem to do, so very well done to them. The Germans are in second with MTV Season, and MDOC are only 7 points behind them. So again, with the clubs it will be the best 6 scores of 7, so we'll have to see how that affects it at the end. The Finns could also catch with Turin being only 7 points behind MDOC, so it is still all to play for in this final event. And also with the countries, the Italians aren't actually winning by as much this time. They're only 17 points ahead of the Finns because they had such a good day today, and I'm not really surprised. It was a more northern European terrain today, and so it is actually quite interesting going into the final event and seeing what happens with that. The Germans are a long way behind the Finns though, a good 60 odd points, so it is only going to be a challenge for third place, and the Brits are 11 points behind them, so we will again have to see how this plays out tomorrow. The Swedes could also catch, only being a point behind the Brits, but we will have to see how it goes, and you will have to join me again tomorrow for the final day of the TORUS training week. But for now, that is the end of today's video. Just remember to like the video and also subscribe to the channel. Again, it helps me out. You get notified whenever I release videos. And yeah, we have been going for a goal of 1,000 people on the leaderboard at some point during the week. I don't think that's going to quite happen, as I think we have averaged about the 800 for every event, but I still think that is a goal that we could aim for at some point in the future. I think we definitely need to expand this sport. It's been good fun throughout all the lockdowns we've had, and I'm definitely looking forward to continuing this as we get out into the open world. So if you do have any orienteering friends that don't know about Trelo, introduce them to TORUS, share these videos and get them on the website competing. And also make sure you're commenting below any extra things that you think I've missed or want to add from any of the analysis or anything. And yeah, I will join you again tomorrow for the final day of the TORUS training week.